for a minute. You can't just.
I'm the co-owner of York GEO Energy, a green energy company. We specialize in electric vehicle charging stations and other green energy saving instruments.
Amy?
Good morning, everyone. Amy Reardon, Outreach Coordinator with Delaware Commute Solutions, which is a free commuter program through DART, Public Transportation for the state of Delaware. We assist with transportation options by working with employers, community organizations, and higher education institutes. And if you see me pop off, I am waiting for a dryer to be delivered, but you know they give you this huge window, so who knows when it will be here.
Okay. Usually 4 hours. Jennifer Jerzak.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Jerzak. I'm with Department of Labor.
And Deborah. She's not quite there. And then the conference room.
So again, my name is Amanda Archambault. I'm with Incorporating Services, and we are a registered agent company based in Dover, Delaware.
Is that everybody? Or is there? Did I miss anybody? I know Deborah's not at her phone. Okay, well, we're going to get going. I want to thank Konrad LaPrade. Did I say it right?
LaPrade.
LaPrade.
LaPrade. Yep, you got it.
From the Delaware State News. I also want to thank our sponsors, which is Bavarian Bakery and Tracerel Dulce, Putt Putt, and Ice Cream Parlor in Wyoming. And Konrad, you're up.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we had one more person pop on, so I'm going to try it again. Luann, do you want to do a quick introduction for us before I get going? Maybe Luann Taylor. Okay. Luann, we cannot hear you, but that's okay. I'm going to get started. And
no video. She says morning, no video.
Okay.
Wonder why. Good news, health.
Okay, good. Great. All right, great. So we're going to get started, and I have 55 minutes, and I'm hoping to leave some time at the end for questions and to give you guys a little bit of time back in your day. So there's a couple things I want to start with, and I'm just going to give you where we're going, and then we'll jump in. First of all, I'm on vacation this week, so I'm in North Carolina in the Charlotte area on vacation. And when Cindy asked me if I wanted to do a coffee coaching and if I could do it this week, I said yes right away. And the reason is because I love talking about productivity and how to do things faster, easier, more efficient. Like these are things that are really important to me. And I would talk about this if people let me all the time. That's not what my day job is, but it's something that I'm really passionate about and interested in. And so I'm hopeful that this will be helpful to you this morning. So we're going to talk about how we can stop work from seeping into the rest of our lives, okay? Which is an issue that a lot of us have, where we've got, whether that's email, or whether that's always thinking about work, or kind of being in a place where work expands to fit the rest of our lives. We're going to just spend some time today kind of talking about some ways that in my life, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you, I've been able to create some boundaries, some hard boundaries that stop work from coming into the rest of my life. But before we get there, I want to introduce myself, because the thing is, this is my experience. It's difficult for you to trust me unless you know who I am, okay? And so I'm going to briefly kind of give you some background on me, so that maybe you trust me a little bit more. And then we're going to talk about some of the tools that that I'm going to introduce today and why you should trust them. So we're going to start with me, why you should trust me, and then we're going to talk about the tools, why you should trust those, and then we'll get into the process. Okay. So my name is Konrad LaPrade. As Cindy said, I am the publisher of the Delaware State News, Beta Bay News Media group. We have newspapers that are in Smyrna, in Milford, Sussex, Salisbury, Dorchester, and obviously the Delaware State News. We have several new papers that are planned for the coming year. We have about 50 employees in the Delaware area. We have continued to increase our newsroom and our sales group, and so we've got a thriving kind of media group in this area. I've been on board with the Delaware State News for just about 4 years now. We've grown revenue in newspapers and media every year by about 5% since I've come on board. Through the pandemic, we grew revenue pretty significantly. And a lot of that is because we've got great products, a great team, and great people that are behind us. However, for those of you who manage people or are in larger organizations, you know that if you are managing more than 3 people, you get into a position where you are constantly sort of being asked questions. So I say often, I used to manage salespeople. I was hired at Delaware State News as the vice president of sales. And I said often, it feels like you're babysitting a whole bunch of people all the time, right? There's always these questions that are coming in. I started my career in newspapers and in media. In 2005, I began to manage a group in the Easton area, Easton, Cecil Lake area. It was about 30 or so employees. I've worked there for a while, went to New York, the upstate New York area, managed another group of between 30 and 35 folks across 4 newspapers in the state of New York, and then went to North Carolina for a number of years and managed a pretty large media group there, about 5 newspapers spanning the North and South Carolina region. The reason I tell you this is because I want to try to convince you in the very brief period of time we have before we begin to talk about the tools that I'm somebody who has a lot of people who are constantly asking me questions, and for the majority of my career, I have been in a place where I haven't handled that well. And I decided in 2011, when we have 4 children. So my second child was born. My wife and I moved from upstate New York to the Charlotte area of North Carolina. And we decided then that either I needed to get another job or I needed to figure out how to create some boundaries so that work wouldn't spill over into my personal life. At that point, I was around 30 years old. I was ready to conquer the world, and I didn't understand how important sort of setting boundaries was. And my wife sat down with me and said, "Look, like we have 2 children. We have more that we want to have, but it's not fair that you're constantly gone and working, and I'm bearing the burden of our kids by myself. Plus, you're missing a lot of time with them." She's absolutely right. So it started for me really trying to find some tools and ways to stop work again from getting into the rest of my life. Does that connect with anybody on the call? Like, are you guys in a position? And if not, maybe we could just we'll talk about the Braves baseball, I guess. But are there those of you on the call where you feel like work kind of gets into the cracks of your life, like you're unable to
Absolutely.
kind of move it around? Okay, good. Yeah, anybody else? Just connect. Good.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, so look, I mean, this is in today's world. Many of you probably know this, right? So back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there was a big movement to automating things, right? So we went to this place where we were becoming less paper oriented. And when that happened, right? When that happened, all of a sudden, those who were kind of looking forward and forecasting things said that by the time we got to today's day and age, so 2000s, in that area, they forecasted that we would work less, right? Because we have all these automated things that are able to kind of fill out in our life. The problem is that because we have all these automated things and they take out a lot of the mundane tasks that we used to do, we actually work more, right? And a number of us on this call are thought workers, right? So there are certainly tasks that you have to accomplish, but a lot of what you're accomplishing, you're thinking about, right? You might be in charge of strategy, or you may be in charge of trying to articulate, or to even, someone who's giving you a strategy, and it's your job to sort of fill that out. And that strategy work is difficult because we could do it at just about any time, right? And so it sort of can seep into, like I said, the rest of our life. So we're going to talk about some tools that have been helpful to me as I've been thinking about this. The next thing I want to introduce to you, and again, all of you are familiar with this, does everybody have like a pen and paper? I know some of you are driving, so don't do this if you're driving. But if you've got like a pen and a piece of paper, or a pencil and a piece of paper, I want you to do something for me, okay? And for those of you who I can see on video, it's okay if you don't do it, but this is a helpful exercise, okay? So I want you just to write down on a piece of paper for me, attend coffee coaching, okay? All right, got it? Now, I want you to cross that off with a check mark by it. Some of you may know this, but that's a dopamine hit. The achievement that you get when you write out something and then you check it off is a dopamine hit. Like, it's a little bit of a, man, that was good, that felt good, right? It's scientifically proven. Checklists, when you write out a checklist and you check off what you did, scientifically, there's a dopamine hit. There's this excitement, like, I did something today, okay? And maybe that was not what it is, but I want you just to, the next time, how many of you, let me just ask you this question. How many of you make lists? You guys list makers here on the call? Okay. How many of you often will put something on your list that you've already done so that you can check it off? Right? You do that. Why would you do that? Well, you do it all the time. And the reason you do it all the time is because it's a dopamine hit when you can check something off. It's a little bit of excitement. You finally did something, right? I feel that way, not you guys. You guys are doing stuff all the time. But for me, if I can fill out a list and I have 10 things already done, I put all of them on there so that I can check them all off. And there's a little bit of an achievement that you feel, right? That's how checklists work. They are one of the most powerful tools in the world. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history. Has anyone read or heard of the book? Maybe you've probably heard of this, but it's a book called The Checklist Manifesto. Anybody read that or heard of it?
Mhm.
Okay. So they spend a ton of time in the Checklist Manifesto. I can't pronounce the guy's name who wrote it. It's worse than mine, but he spent a lot of time in this book kind of talking about checklists, right? So here's a couple of things that checklists have been used for, okay? First of all, checklists were used by pilots to make sure that all of their landing gear was in the right place before they took off. It reduced accidents in the air and by something like 30 or 40%, okay? Checklists have been used and are used by doctors and surgeons to make sure that all of the instruments are removed from their patients before they sew them back up. It reduced lawsuits and issues that were occurring in hospitals by a significant amount. Checklists are used by, right now, 18-wheel drivers, right? If you're a long-haul trucker, you have a checklist that you have to fill out as you walk around your vehicle. And if you don't fill that checklist out, you can't get in the vehicle or you get fined. I would imagine, for me, I use checklists for my the folks that are sending my pages at the end of the night. to make sure that all of the boxes are checked, right? That they've checked, they've checked spelling, they've made sure that this is going in the right area. There are reasons, we use checklists throughout our jobs. And I would imagine that you all have processes, whether you're filing taxes, right? There are checklists when it comes to filing taxes. So I would imagine that all of you have some sort of a checklist in your business that you're using. Is that right? Do you guys have do you all have some sort of a checklist process that your employees or that you're using to create an outcome? Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I
So,
need one.
for example, yeah, well, right. So, for example, the reason that you would use a checklist is you want to create a desired outcome, and you want it to be the same all the time, right? So if I can figure out how it is that I have a perfect day, okay, and and it doesn't have anything to do with weather, it's all controlled by me, I can create a checklist to replicate that perfect time, right? Because again, it's what did I do to get there? And so that's really that's the whole goal of a checklist is you're trying to create a desired outcome 100% of the time, and you want to create the same outcome. So for example, I have a packing list that is always the same, and I have that stored on my desired electronic things that I use. And so when I go on a trip, I pull up my packing list and I have all these items that I need to pack to go on the trip, and some of them I just check off right away because I'm not going camping or I'm not going on a work trip. But that list is already there, and it's there to create a desired outcome because I don't want to forget these items. So I've forgotten my glasses countless times before I made sure they were on my permanent packing list, or I forgot my phone charger, or I forgot, whatever it is. So that's why you have checklists. You have checklists to create a desired outcome 100% of the time. They also feel good to do. Okay. Any questions so far before we get into more of the meat? All right. So if I've done my job, and we'll see, but if I've done my job, where we are currently is you trust some of the things that I'm saying potentially, and you believe that checklists are around to create a desired outcome. And they're used by some of the most important professions in the country and in the world to make sure that there are desired outcomes that are there 100% of the time. So that's where we are. And I want to talk about using some checklists to help work from seeping into the rest of your life. So here's the problem, okay? How many of you get more than 25 emails a day? Yeah, Barbara, okay, good. Dr. Nina, all right.
Nina,
Good.
Laura Taylor.
Okay, yep, so 25 a day is, how about 50? How many of you get more than 50 a day? Okay, yep. How about more than 100? Okay, so
That's a lot of emails.
there we go. So more than 100. So here's the thing, right? Let's say that you work. Let's play at 80 email a day. Okay, and let's say that that's an average. All right. So and I chose 80 because it's not a difficult math problem to do. If you get 80 email a day and you work 8 hours a day, that means that every day you have 10, or every hour that you work, you have 10 inputs, brand new things, hypothetically, that you have to do. Okay? Let's say you get 60 a day or whatever. I mean, you can pick the number, but if you get 40 a day, that means that every hour that you work, you have 4 new inputs, right? And if each one of those emails takes you 3, 4, 5 minutes to respond to or to do something with, now we very quickly build your entire day with responding to email. And again, one more quick question for you. For those on the call, how many of you, is anyone on this call, is it your primary job to read and respond to email? Is that what it says primarily in your job description for anybody? Okay, so no, right? Good. All right, so what we just said is that for the majority of us on the call, we're getting a significant amount of email every single day, right? We're taking at least half the day, in some cases, to respond to those emails, or a third of the day, okay? And for no one on this call says that their primary job is to do that. So we're spending a chunk of time, and I was too, right? For me, it was probably, I'm getting more like 200 emails a day, and it's an incredible amount of time that I could spend every day responding to email. And I could only spend time responding to email, and I'd be busy 50 hours a week. I mean, that's a true thing for me. So, you know, I had to figure out a way to get rid of that, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. So that's one issue. The other thing is, especially now in this, you know, post-COVID environment, how many of you are on conference calls for half your day or a third of your day? Okay, great. That's great. How many conference calls do you think are you on a day? More than one, more than two?
No.
Good. This is not a problem for you guys. That's great. That's great. Well, for a lot of us, for me, as an example, I'm on, you know, conference calls pretty significantly throughout the day, talking to people and that kind of thing. I'm on more Zoom calls than I know what to do with. So again, these are distractions that can pull you away from your primary job. And if you aren't on conference calls, maybe you work in an office where people are bothering you during the day, or maybe you work at home and you have other things that are kind of interrupting your workday. So the thing is that we all have these, you know, we all have this time where we are supposed to be working, right? And that's the way it goes. But what we end up doing is getting distracted by other things that are less important, okay? So the first thing for me, and I did a coffee coaching a couple of years ago where I said this, but the first thing for me is to be laser focused at the beginning of the day on what my objectives are for that day. So if my objectives for that day are to clear my inbox, then I want to have that as an objective and I cross it out. And that's what I did, is I cleared my inbox that day, right? That's rarely one of my objectives. But you know, the first thing to do is to get laser focused on what you need to do that day. So as I began this journey of kind of thinking through how do I get to a place where I can get work to stop seeping into the rest of my life, the very first thing that I did is I walked into the beginning of the day with the 3 things that were most important, okay? So I've also heard it said, and I like this a lot, the 3 snakes that are about to bite you. If you don't shoot those snakes first, you're gonna die, okay? So that may not be helpful for you, but for me, it was what are the 3 biggest things that I must accomplish in this day to move forward the rest of my job, okay? That takes some work to think about, but so the very first thing for me is to get into each day and to take a look at my list and say, okay, here's what I'm going to accomplish this day, okay? And I did that for a while. Like at the, you know, if it's Monday at 5, I made a list of the top 3 things that I had to accomplish the next day. And then Tuesday at 5, I would, you know, did I get those things done? But I still found that wasn't really enough. And so there's a person that I love named Michael Hyatt. He's written a lot of books about sort of how you start and stop your day. And so I developed a checklist, which I'm hopeful will be helpful for you guys. And I thought we could spend some time talking about this. But I developed a checklist that kind of helped me get started at the beginning and end of every day. So this is mine, and I'd like to give you guys after this, whether we do some breakout rooms and then we just discuss it, but some time to kind of think about your own checklist that might be helpful, okay? So at the beginning of the work day, for me, again, my goal was to get laser focused on my objectives so that when I stopped work for that day, I knew that I'd accomplished what I needed to accomplish. I could close my laptop and I could sleep fitfully without worrying that there were things that I needed to do that were kind of cropping up behind me. So the first thing I do at the beginning of the day is, and this takes me, by the way, this is 30 minutes, okay? So it's not a long time. The first thing I did, and really, you could do this in 5 minutes, okay? So all you really need to do is to commit 5 minutes, and you could get what I'm about to tell you. So the first thing I did is I reviewed my annual goals, and I have 10 or so annual goals that I'm shooting for. So these are things that I kind of worked on. They range from personal goals to professional goals. But the first thing I do is I spend a couple of moments just rereading what my annual goals are. So anybody have annual goals that you're working toward? Things that you're kind of thinking about? Okay. How often do you read them? Yeah. So me too, right? I wrote out these goals. I had a goal poster. I mean, I did the whole thing, right? I had one of those really cool Oprah goal posters. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but you get your motivational statements and the whole thing's on them. Like, I did all of that. And I'm like, all right, I don't ever look at the damn thing. Like, I did all of this work, but I'm not spending any time reviewing it. So the first thing I do is I look at the goals I have for the year and I just reconnect with them. Like, do I still want to do these? Are these motivating? And I'll tell you what, in doing that, it helps me to accomplish those goals, right? So a couple of moments, review my goals. And for me, every quarter, I identify 2 or 3 of the goals that I want to work on. So again, I got a little star by them. So am I still on track, right? It's the beginning of the quarter, right? Yeah, it's 12 days into the quarter. Am I on track to get those goals accomplished this quarter? Am I still doing that? Maybe they're habit goals, maybe they're whatever, but is that what I'm doing? So a couple of moments looking at my goals. The next thing I do is I spend a few seconds reviewing my calendar for the upcoming day, okay? This was a game changer for me, and I know it seems really stupid. Those of you who have had paper calendars, you're like, of course, this is what I do all the time. But in an electronic age, we often wait for our electronic calendar to ding us and say, hey, in 5 minutes, you have a call with so-and-so, right? Or you got to remember to leave because you have a dentist appointment. This happened to me a lot, and I realized that I was letting my calendar run me. I wasn't running my calendar. So I'm in charge. I decide what I want to do, unless my boss invites me to come to something. But, for the most part, I decide what I'm going to do. So I look at my calendar first thing in the morning to make sure there's nothing there that is going to completely disrupt my entire day. And again, that happens regularly for me, where I'll have a thing. It's like, oh shit, I got to go to Middletown to, make a presentation on something. And that I can't accomplish the 3 things I wanted to do because I got to drive, 40 minutes to Middletown, make an hour presentation, drive 40 minutes back. By the time I get back, my whole day's off. So reviewing my calendar was really important. Now, again, it may not be important to you guys. You may be able to kind of look at that, but those are the first 2 things I'm doing. And it takes a couple of moments, but that helps me to make sure that my runway is clear to accomplish the rest of the stuff I have to do, okay? I also, and again, for those of you under the age of maybe, 45, you'll think this is silly, but I also have a paper calendar, and I love writing things down on a paper calendar that I can see. So I have an electronic calendar. I review that electronic calendar, and I will often transfer the things on the electronic calendar to a paper calendar. Only the stuff that changes, right? So if I have a meeting, if I have a standing meeting at 9 o'clock every day, I don't put that on my paper calendar because I know it's there. But if I have something, I will put the kind of changed rocks on that calendar. So for example, when I get back, the 24th, right? The 17th, when I'm back, I have written on my calendar Rotary, because it's, it is every week, but it's still a new thing. So that's written on my calendar to remind me Thursdays are kind of wacky. Or, on Monday on my paper calendar, I have written meeting with my team because I have a special meeting that's scheduled on Monday that, is not normally there. So again, I try to do this on a paper calendar just so I can see what are the crazy things that are coming. Like I have chamber mixers written on a paper calendar and that sort of thing. Because again, I want to just know what are the things that might potentially disrupt what I have to do that day. Okay, so goal pages, calendar pages that are both written and electronic. Those are the first two things I'm doing. And then the next thing I do is I look at my task list. So I have an electronic task list. Many of you may have this too, but it's just a to-do list, right? And I have all of the stuff that I have to do on that list. It's a gigantic list, but I have it sorted by due date, and I spend a few moments just looking at it to make sure that stuff that's due today, there's nothing that's due today, like, I have a monthly report that's due around the 10th of every month. So I want to make sure that that isn't popped up today to do, right? So are there any big things on that task list that are, again, just like my calendar, that are going to drop a bomb in the middle of the productivity I want to have in the day? I just want to make sure that I've got all of the, my friend and I used to call it fog, right? My best friend is a lawyer. We went through this process together, 10 years ago. And what we said in the beginning is, we feel like we wake up in the morning and we are, we've got this fog kind of all around us. And we want to figure out how to clear the fog so we can see clearly to create the stuff we have to do. So this is really what I'm trying to do for you, is to just give you some things that might help clear the fog. So goal pages, reviewing my calendar, and then reviewing my task list, okay? The next thing I do, and this is the last one, the next thing I do is I reconnect with the three things that I want to accomplish that day, okay? So those might be tasks, they might be meetings, they might be some other thing. So for example, I'll give you a couple of my big three over the last couple of weeks, right? One of those was to finish a deck for sales and editorial training that I had, so it's PowerPoint. So that was a big thing in that day. Another one was to complete the one-on-ones that I had that day, because there were a lot of meetings. So that was one of my big things I wanted to do. Look at my week and kind of plan it out. That was a big thing for me to do. Submit my month-end expenses for the team and make sure they were approved. Complete my monthly report. So I mean, these are things that, like, again, are very important and that I have to accomplish in that day. So they may be tasks, they may be meetings, but they're the most important thing. And I start by looking at goals, right? So I'm trying to say, okay, if these are the three goals I want to do in the quarter, how am I moving forward on those goals in the week ahead? Does that make sense? So again, you try to break that down into some sort of a bite-sized chunk that you can accomplish it. So reviewing annual goals, looking at my calendar pages, looking at my task list, reconnecting with my big three for the day, okay? And that takes about 5 minutes. It took me longer to explain it than it does to do. And then I spend 25 minutes every morning clearing my inbox. And for me, I could spend a whole different coffee coaching someday doing this, but for me, that's just taking my email and moving them into the correct folders, making sure that there's nothing in there that I have to respond to today or right now, responding to the stuff I have to respond to. And, I set a timer, 25 minutes, I'm done. Normally it takes less than that. My inbox is cleared and I'm ready to reconnect with the three things I have to do that day. And then I start doing them. That's it. That's what I do in the beginning of the day. And that helps me get started. Is that helpful as far as the startup goes for you guys? And then you're going to have your own process that you're doing, but that's my process. Okay. So we're going to talk about a closing process, because again, I started this way. It's like, okay, I've got this startup thing. That's what I do at the beginning of the day. And I still wasn't able to finish the day well. And, this took me a while to get to. And again, a lot of the books that I read were like, you need to, start your day and stop your day well. And I was like, well, okay, but I've started it. If I start well, I'll be able to, whenever I'm finished with the list, I'll just be finished. But that's not the way work works. That's not the way things work, right? It expands. And so figuring out a really strong shutdown process was important to me. So, okay, so that you heard the beginning, this is the end for me. So this happens at 5. My shutdown process is from like 5-ish to say 5:30 to 6 or 5 to 6, depending on that time, but it's between an hour and a half an hour. And again, a lot of that's email, okay? Because I check my email 3 times a day. Once in the middle of the day, Once in the middle of the day, once in the morning, once in the evening. That's it. Other than that, I might glance at it, but it's not open. It's not sitting beside me. I'm not receiving inputs while I'm trying to work on other things. My people know if they need to reach me, they should call me, text me, or send me a Teams message. And that's if it's important. But I try not to look at my email during the day. Okay. So at the end of the day, the first thing I do is open up my inbox. It's been about, say if I checked it at 2, and it's now 5, it's been about 3 hours. So I open up my inbox and I clear all the email that's in my inbox, make sure there's nothing important. It takes me about 20 minutes, okay? The next thing I do is I look at my electronic task list and all the stuff that was due today. And I say, okay, well, here's some things I accomplished, here's some things I didn't accomplish. And then I'll move due dates, just kind of move stuff along, make sure it's, the right spot. And I'll look at what's due tomorrow. Again, this is the end of the day. So let's say it's the end of the day today. On the 12th, I'm looking at what's due on the 13th, okay? Then I select, or I think about what are the big 3 things that I want to accomplish tomorrow. Did I get done my things today? What do I want to accomplish tomorrow? And I'll write out some of those. And then I go backward. I look at my calendar pages for the next day. Are there any snakes that I need to, is there anything in the way that's going to stop me from doing it? So I look at my calendar pages for the next day. I look at my goals, make sure I'm reconnected there. And, I work in my garage. So you'll think this is silly, but I work in my garage. So I'll often sweep my garage up, turn my computer off, wipe down my desk. And that for me simulates a drive back home, right? So I'm just trying to think about because I work at home. So I'm trying to think about when I open the door, I want my kids to know that I'm there, my wife to know that I'm there. I want to be present and available. So how can I recreate sort of a drive process or whatever? And some of you may have a commute, and that's great. What I would encourage you to do is spend the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes listening to music, doing something that gets you out of work mode back into home mode. But I put my phone on the desk. If somebody, I have a Apple Watch which tethers me to a phone call if somebody has to call me, but I'll put my phone on the desk, turn it off, and that's the end of my day. So that's not a crazy thing, but I'm trying to sort of think about, and often if I've got if there's some activity, I often think about what could I do in the evening. So if I'm finishing at 6 and my kids go to bed at 8:30, what am I going to do in the evening to connect with my family, so that I can spend time with them. And I found that that's helpful as well, just to kind of have some objectives, just, hey, I want to do this fun thing. I want to, I'm trying to make sure that I'm out of work mode into home mode. And like many of you, I'm the kind of person that always has a list. I'm a high achiever. I want to make sure that I'm accomplishing things well. And so, it's helpful for me to kind of have some objectives sometimes for the family time. And sometimes it's not, it might be I've got a 2-year-old, which is wonderful. So, I'm going to spend an hour building Legos with my 2-year-old, right? And that may be my objective that evening. But again, trying to get into that mindset. So the beginning process is to look at goals, look at my calendar, look at my task list, and reconnect with my big 3, and then clear out my inbox. The closing process is to clear my inbox, look at my task list, look at my calendar, and look at my goals and choose my big 3 for the next day. Okay. So I know many of you are driving, and so I thought about kind of breaking this up into rooms, but I thought what might be helpful is maybe just to spend some time now with either questions. We could start with some questions if there are questions, and then I thought maybe it'd be helpful to spend a couple of minutes, that's left, giving you some time to think about, is there a list or a process that you want to create yourself, and you could just do it for yourself, right? So I wanted to give you some time to do that. If you want to share some of those things, you can. But I think that might be helpful for you. So why don't we start with questions, and then I'll give you a couple of minutes. We could maybe work on a list. Okay. Are there any questions about what I've said?
So I have a question.
Jamie? Yeah.
So as a business owner, especially and maybe even a new business owner, you have your calendar, your goals, your calendar, your task list to do, but then things come up that are emergency and they take up, sometimes they could be
100%.
emergent meetings that take, sometimes a day or a couple of days, and you have to try and
Right.
rearrange and all that stuff. How do you maneuver around all that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I take the win where I can get it. If an emergency comes up and it's important and it's worth rearranging, then it's worth it, right? And I'm rearranging to do that. I mean, as a small business owner, you're in charge. So if an emergency comes up and that is more important than what you're doing currently, which if it's an emergency, it is, then great. That's what you're doing the next week. And there'll be times for me when I walk into a week with a very clear idea of what I'm going to accomplish, and somebody quits, right? and I'm filling another slot, or someone gets sick, or whatever, or I've got a customer that is one of our large customers who says, hey, I need this or that or whatever, and I've got to spend time responding. But I mean, that's important. And so I will look at it and I'll say, okay, well, my big three, the things I was going to accomplish this week, are going to change because I need to respond to this thing. There are also times when an emergency occurs and I look at it and I say, that's going to take us off course. And is it really that big of an emergency? And there are many, many times when it is, and then there's some times when it's not. But again, like what's helpful for me at least is that if I have the course in front of me where I know where I'm going, then I'm better equipped to make decisions about what's important and what isn't. In my past life, if an emergency happened, I just did it, right? I was running all over the place, and I had I didn't have any real guiding principles to help me say, this is what I'm doing. And there are going to be emergencies. And when they happen, clear your day as much as you can, clear your calendar, and don't beat yourself up that you didn't get the things accomplished that you wanted to accomplish, because you accomplished an emergency, which is important. And, that was really freeing for me. But it's also helpful, at least in my life, to say, like, here's what I was trying to accomplish, and I want to, and if this emergency or this, this person, like I have many of you, I have a couple of sales reps who, like, everything is an emergency. So, I get like, most of them don't even report directly to me anymore, and I'll get, a call, an email, a text, oh my gosh, the world, and it's like, okay, well, that is going to go over here because that isn't an emergency, right? And this is where you're going to sit right now because I have this other thing I have to accomplish. And so I'm going to work on that. But then if it is a true emergency, clear your day out because, you're the boss and you get to decide. And if it's important to your business, you want to make sure that you accomplish that and fix it.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions? And it's great if there are. Like I love talking about this stuff. So.
I have some thoughts. First of all, I truly appreciate this presentation. I took lots of notes. I didn't have a big enough
Thanks,
notepad.
Barbara.
I believe that if you read it in print, you retain it longer. And I take notes about everything. I like the brain productivity that you discussed. And what you're doing is you're demonstrating priorities, but you're not just demonstrating them for us and for your business, you're demonstrating them for your family. I'm way beyond raising children and grandchildren, but priorities are really important. And what you're doing is you're setting examples for everyone. And I truly appreciate that. And there was something else here. When's your birthday?
The 10th of February.
February. Okay, thank you. Because I'm an anal Virgo and I keep apologizing for it, but I really shouldn't because you just proved that I'm okay. Thank you.
That's right. There you go. Yeah, I think you know, one of the things that is really helpful for me and is as you said, like demonstrate priorities. You know, my 13-year-old is constantly sort of carrying around her to-do list, and again, like I know I'm creating crazy children, but my goal is that I want my kids to be able to say, here are my priorities, and here's what I'm going to do. Because I think that in the world that we live in, where we have all of these priorities thrown at us, I mean, again, you know, can you imagine, Barbara, when you started working, being able, you know, like to walk to your mailbox 300 times a day, right? You'd walk to your mailbox once, you pick up your mail, and you come back, right? But right now, in today's business climate, effectively, we walk to our mailbox 300 or 400 times a day, which is absolutely crazy, right? We have all of these inputs coming in ways that like we never had before. We have phone calls, we have, you know, team messages or Slack messages, or however your company kind of communicates. You are on group chats, you are on Facebook Messenger, you're on, you know, you have all of these things where people are putting inputs in, and every single input, this is what I tell people, if you work with your inbox open, if you have your email open and you're trying to work, this is what happens. I can get to the top of your to-do list like that by sending an email. I immediately come to the top of your to-do list. And when I realize that, and again, maybe for you guys, that's what you want to do. But for me, when I realized that somebody could get to the top of my to-do list by sending me an email, I'm like, well, that's stupid. Like, my company pays me to accomplish a task, and I'm allowing someone else to dictate what I do by having my email open and checking it all the time, right? And it's okay if this is what you've done, but I would bet that of the, you know, 8, 9 people on this call, many of you have checked your email more than once while we're on this call. Again, perfectly fine. That's okay. It's a dopamine hit though too. You know, you're allowing that thing, that input, to be what you do. And you know, I'm an addict for dopamine. And so, you know, I'm going to tell you something that you'll think is, you know, again, I show my wife this and she rolls her eyes at me, but I set my phone to black and white because I didn't want to look at it. And I wanted to, and for me, my phone is now, it's a black and white device. I did some research to figure out how to turn an iPhone black and white. I did that so that it wasn't pleasant to look at, because your phone, your iPad, your laptop, all these brand new beautiful icons that you have, all the ways that they want to reach you, it's all meant to bring you into an addiction where you're constantly checking your phone. And you've all heard that, but it's true. Like, these companies are really smart. They do that. I turned off every single, and again, you don't have to be like me, but I turned off every single notification that my phone receives. I don't get text notifications. I don't get email notifications. I get phone calls from 4 people. If I want to look at my text messages, I have to go look at my text messages. If I want to go look at my email, I have to go look at my email. I don't have email on my phone. Deleted it because I don't want to receive. If I have my phone, that's not an email device. I'm going to respond to email on my laptop. I can't tell you how many times while I've been working, I'll send someone an email, you know, during my time that I'm checking my email, and I'll get a response back. Sorry, I can't respond right now. I'm on my phone. I didn't want you. I didn't want you to respond. Tell me that you're on your phone. I want you to respond when you're able to respond. But I was like that, and it's been really impactful to me to realize, like, I'm wasting time. And again, email's not the only thing that's stealing your productivity, but for me, it was a lot of it. So.
There's another important point, and that is, and I can verify this, the older you get, the more an interruption disturbs your thought process.
For For sure.
It's definite. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Barbara, it's scientific too, right? So like if you, there's many studies that have been done to track what happens, and it takes like between 5 and 10 minutes to get back on track once you're interrupted. So for those of you who believe, as I did, right, I believe this, that I was able to multitask, which is, you know, I was in a chamber meeting a while ago where somebody's like, look, everybody who's under the age of so and such can multitask. And nobody can multitask. What you're doing is paying attention to two things at once. You're context switching. So what that means is I'm looking at this screen and I'm turning over here and looking at that screen. Nobody can do that. You can't look at both screens at once and pay attention. Your brain doesn't work that way. And scientifically, your brain doesn't work that way. What you're doing is just switching context. And you know, maybe you can do that, but if you are switching context often, you can't give your full attention to what you're doing. And that's why I did all the things I've done with my phone, because I don't want my, and again, this won't connect to some of you, but I don't want my 6-year-old, my 2-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 13-year-old memory of their dad to be, he sits around while he's at my baseball game and looks at his phone. I don't want that to happen. And so I've done everything I possibly can to eliminate those kinds of distractions. And I don't want my employees, like I remember watching a Jerry Seinfeld stand-up where he said, you know, when did it become okay to sit in front of someone and open a newspaper up and read it while they're talking, right? But that's what we do with our phone all the time, right? We're in a meeting, we're in a whatever, and you know, we're like, yeah, let me just, okay, finish sending this email while you're talking. But don't worry, I'm still listening to you. And again, like that's okay, right? But that's not, I don't want to live my life like that. And again, I'm an addict. Many of you are not as bad as I am, but that's my problem. So.
I don't know if you can hear me. I might have to move.
Yes.
Because I lost
We can hear you.
But I have found that I have to turn my email off, like you said. Otherwise, I'm on it all day.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Well, and that's what I was saying is, you know, I try 3 times a day to check my email. And again, that may be really extreme for some of you. So, you know, what is an extreme? Maybe you take it to 5 times a day, take it to 6 times a day. I don't know, but you know, pick a number. What I found, and again, this is an old management tactic that my boss taught me early on. You know, most of the time, when someone sends you something that's urgent, is it really urgent? Like, you know, if you wait 10 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, like what happens? And what I said to all of my employees is, if you send me an email, we actually set communication standards in my company. So if you send me an email and you're an internal employee, the expectation is that you know, we have an hour to 2, or I think it's 2 hours to respond to that email. And you know, thanks, Bono. And so that was something that we did. And the other thing that I realized is that often people expect a fast response from me on email because I was responding quickly. If you don't respond quickly, then you know there are many people that you email where you recognize, like, I'm going to send this person an email, but they don't respond right away. Right? You know that, and that's because they've set their own kind of expectation. So. Other questions? Much as I am surprised to admit it, I talked for a whole hour. So there you go. All right. So here's what I would encourage the rest of you to do, and I'll let you go with this. You know, I think as you are, you know, looking and thinking about starting and stopping your day intentionally, it starts with creating a list that, you know, that works for you. And I gave you what I do. You're going to be different. That's fine. But think about how you can start and stop. And just by saying the words start and stop, it helps you to be in work mode and then out of work mode and on to something else. So, wow, there are 2 Cindy's on and they look different. Okay. All right. That's a trippy reality right there.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Stay there.
There's something with my video. I don't know why, but it
No,
just
you're
isn't
okay.
working.
Yeah,
Or
we
my
can see you.
sound.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's what I have. Cindy, thank you guys for the time this morning. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I would talk about productivity all day long if I could. So I said this earlier, I'm going to give you one pitch. I'm the publisher of the Delaware State News and betabaynews.com. So if you do one thing for me today, if you go to our website, betabaynews.com, you can sign up for a free newsletter. So I hope you will think about that. We've got curated newsletters that we send out every day, some of them once a week, some once a month. So you're free to sign up for those. If you do 2 things, think about subscribing to our journalism. We are a for-profit company owned by a nonprofit trust. We don't have shareholders, and really we're an unbiased, unpartisan media. And that's important. Local journalism is important. It's important for it to be around. And so I hope that that's something you'll consider doing. That's what I have.
Thank you, Konrad.
For sure. Thanks for letting me talk. Yeah.
Thank you. Go hug your kids.
I'm going to. We're off this week on vacation, so I'll see you guys later.
Have fun.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I don't understand why are these.
Bye, Cindy.